Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the House of Bloodstein, Perlamum, Chapter 9, God's Temple. So, when we last checked in on our heroes, they had arrived on the League world of Xandar to allow Sam to rest and get healthy again after her ordeal in space. Due to the wiles of Wilhela Corman Grand, they promptly ran into Domino of Holly, often known as number 6 of the Xandar 44, a former rival for Kay's hand, whom Sam hates with a literal killing passion. Fortunately, Sam was resting, asleep, and didn't know that number 6 was right outside the hatch door. They got number 6 away, and in talking, they discovered she knows the location of one of Wilhela Corman Grand's Perlamum pieces, and she has agreed to lead them to the piece. Kay rented a few rooms at an inn, took Sam there, put a sleep bung around her neck so she'd get a good night's rest, and assigned King to watch over her while they visit God's Temple. God's Temple appears in a number of my books. It's sort of a nexus, sort of a neutral ground where many gods commune and converge, and you can go to this temple, locate the god of your choice. They look like statues and they look like all sorts of things, and see if a communication can be established. And that's God's Temple. It's in the Valley of the Moons, a place on Xandar where all 7 of Xandar's moons can be seen at once. If the moons are in the proper alignment, you can see them all, which is the only place on Xandar that can happen. And it's there at the end of a long trail. So that's where they are on their way to, although it's 3,000 miles distant into the desert. So they have to mount up on the Goshawk and fly out there. The Goshawk can cover a lot of ground, so 3,000 miles isn't as daunting a trip as it might sound. So, let's begin, shall we? Chapter 9, God's Temple. They all climbed aboard the Goshawk, and Philip fired it up. He lifted the craft into the air and rumbled west. Sarah gazed out of the open hatch, watching the landscape pass below. "Close the hatch, Sarah," Philip said. "I'm going to power up to full cruising speed." Reluctantly, Sarah came back in and closed the hatch. "Follow the Tor west," number 6 said. "Eventually, we shall reach the temple." "God's Temple, you said?" Sarah asked. "What's that? Sounds cool." Number 6 laughed. "It's a disused temple once dedicated to Mab Sornath, the old Xandarian goddess of destruction. Her cult fell out of favor, and the temple was abandoned. In the intervening years, the traveling cult of the gods took up residence there and converted it into God's Temple, a place where one may commune with many gods." Sarah listened wide-eyed. A temple of the gods was a place she would love to explore any day. The Goshawk was a fast ship and covered the distance in only a short period of time. Following the broad, life-giving Tor under the pearly light of Xandar's moons, they headed west into the arid wildlands. Soon, the flats gave way to a tumbled landscape of hills and steppe. A vast range of dry mountains came up and passed by. Kay spoke up. "We're being followed." Philip checked his scanners. "I don't see anything on the scopes." Kay shrugged. "I see a ship following us about 150 nautical miles back. It's way up in the stratosphere. It's been following us since we left Xandar Prime." "What kind of ship is it?" Philip asked. "I don't know exactly. It looks like a fast cruiser of some kind." Kay beheld the ship in his sight. It was a silvery vessel, clearly League in design. It had a teardrop sort of shape with darkened cockpit glass, a pointed nose, small wings meant to retract into the fuselage when out of atmosphere. It had an oversized tail assembly and a number of strap-on rocket engines trailing a faint line of contrails. A name was painted in proud lettering near the cockpit glass. It says "The Valiant" on the side. Kay sighted further, through the hull of the ship, and saw the occupants. It's the Wunderlucks, sure enough. I see them all in there. The smaller fellow, Rusty I think his name was, is flying the ship. There's that Bravo Ernst, Aiken Wunderluck, and Clara. I see a fifth person in the ship with them, a man in a bright red suit with a black cloak. I don't know who he is. What do those scum want? Sarah said. They must be trying to horn in on our Lady Chrysania action again. Kay cloaked the Goshawk and Philip slowed. If I may, Number 6 said, I can take care of these people. And do what? Kill them? Kay asked. She shrugged. I could do that if you like. But knowing you, I'm fairly certain you wouldn't want me to kill them. The people you describe have been hanging about town recently, throwing money around and buying anything they thought might be valuable. They haven't made any friends while they've been here, and they certainly don't have much positive to say about you, Kay. Their puerile quips do not interest me in the slightest, but you're correct. I'd not see them killed. Well then, I can infest their ship with Stts. It'll get into their scopes and feed them false images. They'll be chasing ghosts and never know a thing. That sounds cool, Sarah cried. Let's do that. You are so cool, Dom. Way cool. Thank you, Sarah. Number 6 moved her hands about and soon had 2 gleaming silver Stts, shaped like tiny prancing men in her palms. Oh, those are awesome! Can I let them go? Sarah asked, eager to hold them. Number 6 placed the man-shaped Stts into Sarah's hands. Can these things really do all that? Infect machinery and so forth? They can. Stts are one of our most potent weapons. They can do virtually anything we wish them to. And they won't be detected? Philip asked. They will not. What's the second one for? Kay asked. I'm going to infest their engines, just in case you change your mind and wish them dead. I'm certain I won't. Sarah held the Stts in her hands. Philip, slow the ship down and open the hatch. The Goshawk slowed to a safe speed and the hatch slid open, revealing the passing arid landscape below. Sarah leaned over the open hatch and let the Stts go. They jumped off her hand and zipped through the air to the east at remarkable speed, climbing out of sight in seconds. Philip closed the hatch and accelerated fast. Kay sighted and followed their progress. Moving like tiny missiles, the Stts honed in on the Wunderlucks ship and silently penetrated the hull. One of them crawled into the ship's computerized controls, while the other entered the engine housing. None of the Wunderlucks occupying the ship noticed a thing. As Kay watched, the ship radically changed course. I see the Wunderlucks ship veering off to the north. Number 6 smiled and sat back. See, they're following a ghost on their scopes. I'll lead them off to the polar north somewhere where they won't be much of a nuisance. She put her feet up on the couch, clearly pleased with herself. Did your Sam do that, I wonder? Kay didn't reply. Free from their pursuers, they continued west, entering a field of jagged mountains. There, Number 6 said, pointing. There, by the river, land the ship. Down below was a small settlement of several tumbled buildings huddled near the riverbank. Lanterns, emitting a soft bluish glow, bobbed on the water. This area is known as the Valley of the Moon, since all 7 Xandar moons may be seen at once. The temple beyond is the God's Temple. Some say it sits at the mouth of the Destroyer's Road, where the end of all things awaits. Sounds cool, Sarah cried, nearly drooling with excitement. Philip found a good spot to land and brought the Goshawk down. They all got out, Kay keeping the ship cloaked. Number 6 inspected his work. Not a bad cloak, Kay. Not bad, but let me add a few finishing touches. She enhanced the cloak a bit, plunging it further into invisibility and undetectability than Kay could manage, and was satisfied. They moved to the settlement and found a candle-lit chapter house populated by an eclectic group of monks of various denominations. They requested a donation. Kay offered them several Blanchford haters, which they happily accepted. They left the chapter house and moved into a dense thicket of spiny trees that caught on their clothing with annoying frequency. A path led them to the densest part of the thicket. Do not damage the trees, Number 6 warned. It's considered bad luck, and the gods will not favor it. We'll be through in a moment. As promised, they emerged into a clearing. Ahead, Tucked into the spur of a towering mountain was a darkened cathedral built in the classical style. It looked old and disused, illuminated only by moonlight on white stones. Sarah took in the sight with her usual enthusiasm. "Wow! Look at that! What a creepy place! So the piece we're looking for is in there somewhere?" "It is," number 6 replied. Philip gazed dubiously at the imposing structure. "What is in there?" "The gods," she answered. "Well, what are we waiting for?" Sarah said. "Let's go!" Sarah and Philip trudged off. Kay and number 6 hung back a bit. "So, Dom," Kay asked, "are you the left bishop? You've led us to this place. Your knowledge appears to be precise, and Wahilla Corman Grand claims to be a friend of yours. Therefore, are you the left bishop?" She looked at the ground. "Of course I am. And what would you have of us?" Number 6's usual cool demeanor fell away for a moment. "What could I ask of you, Kay? My heart is broken. I gave it to you, and you accepted it, and then you were gone. What a story I had to tell my sisters, that my love's dead girlfriend returned from the grave and reclaimed your hand, as if nothing had happened, as if time hadn't passed and the sun hadn't risen and fallen over her tomb. Not only is she a denizen of the supernatural, she's rude and rather naive as well. A proper lady should have more decency than that." She pointed at the cathedral. "The gods told me what would happen. Right there, they told me your Monima would return from the grave like a demented creature of the night. Like the coming of winter, there was no stopping it, but I took steps. I placed symbols and herbs in and around her tomb meant to ward off her spirit and prevent her coming. I left STTs as sentinels. Obviously, my measures didn't work. It seems nothing would stop her. I told you Sam had some sort of plan, that she predicted her death and returned from it. You're such a beautiful woman, Dom. Certainly, there's someone more exciting out there for you than me. Probably. But what matter? You forgot about me, but I didn't forget about you. The heart always knows what it wants. So you asked me what I wanted as the left bishop." Kay was a bit dubious. "I did. I want you to promise me something. I want you to promise me that should your Monima find herself dead and entombed a second time, you will forget about her and return to me." Kay was rather put off. "What sort of request is that?" "The only reasonable one I can offer, and the least violent." "Are you threatening Sam?" "No. I'm simply saying I might be by often to pray at Carahill's statue. I know Sam has a habit of sitting out there wondering if I would show to pray. I've cloaked myself and walked away several times, leaving Sam to sit out there alone, thinking she could stand against me. One time I considered TKing her medallion right off her neck and watching her freeze. But I didn't do it, did I? I'm offering you a reasonable solution to this problem. I promise I won't come to the grove. I promise I won't antagonize your wife. I'll just wait out the decades until she's gone. So what do you say? You can have peace, or you can have turmoil, wondering if every day might be her last." Kay calmed himself and thought about it a moment. "I will promise, Dom, that should you leave Sam in peace, and should you have nothing to do in any way, shape, or form with Sam's one-day demise, I will extend you my hand if you are still willing to take it. Sam must not be attacked, murdered, poisoned, conspired against, or otherwise harmed. I intend for Sam to stand with me for the length of my days." Number 6 smiled. "Done. I will do no treachery. One thing, you realize Monimas only live about 90 to 100 years and become old and infirm and wasted away for the final 20 or so. I researched it. And what's more, the big Monimas, what are they called, are supposed to have even shorter lifespans. Your Sam is a big Monima, isn't she? Elders like you and me have 3 times their lifespan. You will still be young and beautiful with well more than half your life ahead of you when she is broken down and forearmed in her wretched old age. Also, there is Silvertech to consider. Silvertech is said to increase one's lifespan. How old is your mother? Have you ever wondered? Among the Black Hats, Sigillus of Metatron was known to be quite old. How old, I don't know. Silvertech people like you and I could very well be immortal. In any event, your life with your Monoma will be over before you know it, and I will be there to remind you of your promise." From a distance away, Sarah shouted, "Hey, come on! Let's do this!" She and Philip were standing by the cavernous open door to the temple. Sarah lit her sight and panned about, the blue beams throwing the temple into craggy relief. Kay and Number 6 walked down the path and joined them. He was troubled. Of course he knew the forensic realities regarding the differences in elder and Monoma lifespans. As a boy, he had watched Sarah's grandmother, Countess Hortensia of Monoma, get old and pass away, wrinkled and gray. But Sam was so vital and strong, so he had never allowed himself to fully deal with the reality that Monomas did have a much shorter lifespans than elders. The thought of Sam growing old and dying before his eyes was crippling. They would have to do something about that, figure out an arcane method to thwart it. They entered the temple. Inside was a vast, lofty interior. It was like a confused warehouse. Statuary, taking up most of the available space, was heaped about in all directions. It reminded Kay of the warehouse in the village, where all of the colorful decorations and accessories brought out for the yearly elephant festival were kept. Only here the statues were seemingly thrown about in random confusion. There were statues of various types of animals. There were statues of men, statues of women, odd alien creatures, mechanical constructs, formless blobs, incomplete body parts, trees, mountains, abstract assemblages, items of clothing, single-celled creatures, and on and on. Predictably, Sarah was overjoyed. "Look at all this! What are these statues?" "The gods," Number 6 replied, "in all their many forms. If you have a request or wish to curry favor, simply go up to one and make your pitch. Perhaps your query will be answered." "I don't need to task the gods for anything. Wait! Where's Carahil?" "Here somewhere." "Carahil!" Sarah yelled, her voice booming. "Are you expecting a response?" Philip asked. "Sure! Why not? He's our buddy!" "Carahil!" she screeched. They listened for a response. Something rustled deep in the interior of the temple. "Come on, let's find Carahil," Sarah demanded as she and Philip squirmed into the ranks of statuary, their dual sights whirling about. "Where is the piece, Dom?" Kay asked. "It's in an alcove nearby. Come, let's get it." They worked their way deep into the masses of god statues. Some apparently aloof, others, more aggressive, stuck out and fell into their way, gazing down at them with hopeful, stone-locked eyes, seeking attention. Kay didn't pay them any mind. They reached to the western wall of the temple. An alcove offered an inviting bit of free space. Number 6 looked around, perplexed. "What's wrong?" Kay asked. "The piece is missing. It was right here in a wooden box." "Perhaps it was stolen." Kay tried to open his sight and witness what had happened, but his sight failed. The temple seemed to be preventing its use. From across the temple, Sarah's voice rang out. "Kay, did you find the piece?" "No." "Well, come here. Look who we found." Kay and Number 6 made their slow way across the cathedral. Sarah and Philip were gathered in the corner nave, about halfway deep. They stood before the smiling statue of a great seal, awash in their mutual beams of blue and silver sight. Carahil. Kay looked up at the domed, happy face and was encouraged. With Carahil around, anything was possible. Sarah had climbed up the pedestal and was hugging him around the neck. "Hey, buddy! Good to see ya! Let me dust you off here," she said with boundless affection. "Hi, Carahil," Kay said. "Hope you've been well. We could use your help if you have a moment." The statue didn't stir. Carahil, still nothing. Kay suddenly felt very silly speaking to a statue. Sarah knocked on his head. "Come on, buddy. Time to wake up. It's us. We're family." Philip rubbed his chin. "Perhaps the Wunderlucks stole the piece." "I'm fairly certain the Wunderlucks haven't been here," Number 6 said. "Had they the piece, they would have made it known in Xandar Prime." "Then where is it?" Sarah said. "We could use King right about now." A great bang came from behind them. Blocking their path was a statue that hadn't been there before. At least none of them remembered it being there. It was a lithe female in human form, tall and slender, wearing a fancy gown. She had short hair styled close to her head. Her face was feminine and pleasing. Covering her eyes were a pair of geared goggles that wrapped around her face and disappeared in her hairline. The goggles were large and protruding, hiding her eyes. Held aloft in her small feminine hands was an ebonwood box inlaid with brass. "Is that the box?" Kay asked. Number 6 nodded. Kay stepped forward and took the box from the statue's hands. Inside was a dark blue felt lining with fitted depressions for an entire perlamum set. A pearly turquoise bishop sat in the correct position on the left-hand side. "Yep," Sarah said, "that's it." Kay closed the box and looked up at the goggled statue. "So who is this?" "A goddess," Number 6 replied. "Which one?" Philip asked. "Could be anyone," she replied. "Apparently you sparked her interest and curried her favor." Kay held the box up. "In any event, thank you for this. We need to be getting back to Xandar Prime. Sam will be waking soon, and I want to be there when she does." They made their way out of the temple, Sarah entranced with the place. She went back in once more and gave the Carahil statue another warm hug, and then exited. Looking back one more time, Kay saw the statue of the Goggled Goddess had changed positions. She was now facing the exit, and her left hand was held up, as if waving. And with that, we conclude Chapter 9, God's Temple. The gang made their way across the arid landscape of Xandar, found God's Temple, went in. Sarah was predictably entranced with what was inside. And they come across the statue of Carahil, though he didn't respond when they started, fooling around with his statue. Oddly, a statue of a lady with goggles seemed to take an interest in them and had the box with the piece they were looking for, the left bishop. As I said before in earlier chapters in Visitor to the Firth House, there's nothing in this book that's here for no particular reason. So whoever this goggled statue is, we'll be seeing more of her. If not in this book, then other books. And if you're perceptive, if you've read or listened to Cat, you should know who this person is. If you do, put it down in the comments, if you so dare to do so. The God's Temple is it's a common place I write about a lot. As Number 6 said, it does sit at the mouth of the Destroyer's Road, which has been walked a few times in other books. The Destroyer's Road is sort of like the home of the gods away from their home. It's like all the gods have like a residence on the Destroyer's Road. It's not something that is referenced again in this tale, but in other ones, many heroes have walked down that road. So, things are progressing nicely. They've recovered the piece, and now it is on to Wham. And Chapter 10 is entitled Wham. And some people say, hey, you stole the name from George Michael's. No, I didn't steal the name from George Michael's. God rest his soul. Because that was Wham. W-H-A-M exclamation point. This is Wham. W-A-A-M. No exclamation point. Completely different spelling, completely different place. Charming as that might seem. Has nothing to do with George Michael. Anywho, we will continue the quest next week as the gang finally arrives at the enemy city of Wham. And we'll see how that goes. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I'm your host, Ren. Peace out.